listening? You hear that? The birds are chirping. Ah, what a sentiment. Yes, we are here at CCTV. Brother R.A., Unsurpassable Justice. That's the name of this particular program. Unsurpassable Justice. And we are here, yep. More construction. Used to be Quest Diagnostics, but now they're putting in maybe 500 units in Central Square. And here we are in the palatial suite. Brother R.A. and Brother Ken. Unsurpassable Justice. You have an opening thought?
Yeah, I do. Yesterday I went to a rally against circumcision.
Oh my goodness.
And there I picked up a bit of information. Top 10 frequently asked questions about genital cutting or circumcision. Number 1, why is genital cutting bad? Genital cutting is the needless removal of an anatomically important structure from the penis of a baby. Cutting is extremely painful and traumatic to a newborn. It takes away highly sensitive and functional tissue from the adult male and replaces it with scar tissue. Nature designed the penis to function with a foreskin, and genital cutting disrupts the natural design. Number 2, isn't it just a snip? People that call it that are in denial or ignorant. It actually involves strapping a baby to a restraint, scalping, cutting, crushing, and cutting again to finally remove the foreskin. The baby is fully aware of what is happening. Number 3, how did it get started in America? It started around 1890 by advocates like John Harvey Kellogg, whose radical ideas about sexuality included trying to prevent boys from masturbating. It gained greater popularity as a status symbol of a hospital birth. Number 4, why is foreskin special? Foreskin is important erogenous tissue containing tens of thousands of specialized sensory nerve endings, the sensitive ridges, band, and 15 square inches of guiding skin. Number 5, is it medically necessary? Experts say no. The American Academy of Pediatrics says there may be possible benefits, but not sufficient to recommend. Canada's Pediatric Society doesn't recommend it. All European medical groups denounce it. Number 6, why would parents cut their son? Genital cutting is now perpetuated with overstated benefits and fear tactics aimed at new parents. Promoters falsely claim that intact men are at risk for cancer, STDs, infections, or rare conditions like phimosis. Promoters may portray genital cutting as necessary for social conformity, or play on a cut father's insecurities by claiming a son's penis should look the same as his. Number 7, what about religion? 98% of genital cutting is done in hospitals by doctors at parental request for perceived social reasons, or just plain ignorance. Christianity discourages genital cutting. St. Paul, Galatians 2:6. Many Jewish families have switched to Brit Salom ceremony, which doesn't involve genital cutting. Number 8, doesn't it prevent HIV? Cutting promoters tout a few highly controversial rural African studies that claim to find a slight reduction in cut males acquiring HIV through vaginal intercourse. They concede condoms must still be used. No studies in the United States or Europe have found cutting to provide any risk reduction in HIV, STD infections. There is zero risk reduction for women or gay men. Number 9, aren't most men cut? Worldwide, most men are not cut. In fact, 80% are intact. Primarily, the Mideast, and parts of Africa still cut children. Rates in America are dropping. In 2013, the U.S. Center for Disease Control reported a 57% cut rate of newborns, and that is decreasing by about 2% per year. Finally, 10. Isn't it safe? Some estimates that 100 babies die every year from cutting. That's from Google, circumcision death. More suffer disfigurement such as loss of the gains or entire penis. Even greater numbers of men experience lifelong complications that interfere with sexual performance.
So, as you read that, I went ahead and found, I can't get it on the larger computer, but you talk about circumcision. This is not planned. I did not discuss this with Ken prior to this, but I have a photo that it was explained to me that on the 8th day after birth, the baby is circumcised. And this is a picture of the Pope sucking the blood off of the circumcision of the young male child. Now, circumcision, let's impede the male at its birth. And why did you bring that up?
I went to an anti-circumcision rally yesterday, so it's kind of on my mind. And it's been on my mind for some time. Once I became aware as a young adult that this was an unnecessary operation, I've been opposed to it.
So let me just go ahead and fill in the gap. As you saw, as he was reading, I took my hit, and I'm now in the zone. So y'all have to keep up, because I have a venue. I have a responsibility as Brother R.A. reaching unsurpassable justice. And so I stir the pot. I work towards raising melanin-dominant people's consciousness. So you talk about anti-circumcision, and that wasn't my topic. I came in to talk to Ken because he said to me at the library last week, look, you ain't even listening to me. So I wanted to carry on from there on air. But he comes in with this particular topic, and then I just wish to read once again from the calendar. What is this? A History of Racial Injustice 2018 calendar. And we, as melanin-dominant people, what? Martin Luther King got shot in 60 what? And we are still dealing under the guise of melanin recessive inbred mutant albino rules and regulations. This is what happened on June 27th, 1973. This is now 2018. Let me make this clear. We aren't that far beyond this. 1973. I was born in 62. Two young black girls, Minnie and Mary Alice Leaf, sued health clinic in Montgomery, Alabama for sterilizing them without their knowledge or consent. When he comes in, talks about circumcision, and this is what happened in 73. I was born in 62. You were born when?
55.
How far have we as melanin-dominant people with the liquid pineal gland, how far have we progressed? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go off. We're 10 minutes into the show. I'm Brother R.A., the host of Unsurpassable Justice. But Brother Ken last week, he was on the air, says, yo, R.A., you always walk by me in the library. You just acknowledge me, but you don't stop and talk. Maybe you understand why I don't stop and talk now. But what's your retort? What is your concern as a melanin-dominant black man? You got your hair locked. You're a natural brother. You talk about last week's show, PhDs and those that have ascertained melanin recessive value structure. That's how I look at it. And I, as a divine energy, a child of the sun, the S-U-N, as the S, the serpent, or the slimy, the snake, reaching from top to bottom, that's how the S is drawn. The U, open to the universe, and up, down, and up. Yes, I go down and I go all the way up. So this is who I am as Brother R.A. I need to hear you say something. Jump in, Ken. You have a retort, you have a response. Interrupt my monologue. I want this to be a dialogue. If you can, or I can read some Tao if you wish. But actually, one of the questions I came up with for you, Ken, is would I expect a melanin recessive inbred mutant albino with a calcified or hardened pineal gland who doesn't have the total tenacity or capacity to reach the deep innerness of self? That's their melanin recessed or stopped. That's because their parents were related. The mother and the father were too similar of the same gene pool. So with the melanin dominant and melanin dominant that are not family, their genes lock. Melanin recessive, the genes clashed. Stopped the melanin. They have the calcification of the first eye.
There's something occurring here.
Yes, I'm listening.
Whereby in conversation, there's timing. Mm-hmm. There are little behavioral cues that participants in conversation get from one another about when they have something to say. Given that me and you don't talk, those cues haven't been developed. So you can go on and on and on and on, and you can wait for me to jump in. But I don't want to, in front of this audience, shout at you or interrupt you when you're saying something. If you have a point to make, I'd like you to make your point. And then, if you want, question, do I have any questions about the point that you made? To me, that's a flow of a conversation. And I kind of think that those kinds of things happen when people get used to talking with one another. And those are the reasons why I asked you at the library, why don't we talk? So that we can get familiar with each other and what kind of behavioral cues that we'll give to each other about when we're ready to speak and when we're listening and such.
And I appreciate you for that. Absolutely. I can't deny or denounce. I'm not going to argue or debate. You're right. And I go to the library to watch the DVDs or borrow the DVDs. So I had made reference last week or the weeks prior to this program, Elizabeth Montgomery and Bewitched and Barbara Bain and Barbara Eden, I Dream a Genie, and The White Woman and Mission Impossible. I grew up watching these particular shows, and as a media professional, it's like, how was I how is my mind and brain shaped at those very formative years by the media for me to have a more appeal of a white woman as opposed to a black woman. And I mean, in my 56 years of self-analysis, I've come to this particular point in understanding, yes, it was ingrained that I had self-hate. And that's what, no, I don't want to be black. Nana would say, blacker the berry, sweeter the juice, yellow pus people have no use. And so I'm looking at my own rearing and analyzing. I mean, that's me.
Well, for me, when it comes to the media, I don't know if I was exposed to a great deal of TV, but I was exposed to I Dream of Jeannie and those programs as well. But I could always compare what I'm seeing on the TV to the experiences that I had with my mother, my sister, and other black women in my experience. And I could also compare it with the white girls who were my classmates in school, or the white teacher. And so there's the TV, which is giving me an image and a model for me to think about. But then there's all these other lived experiences that I also have to contrast that with.
And so the lived contrast, I mean, you're now expressing experience versus the psychological mind self-hate, if you will. I mean, yeah, so in real life, have you experienced, because of your skin color, people dealing with you differently?
As compared to what?
Exactly. So, I mean, if we, as melanin dominant people, 9/10 of the population of the planet.
So I would submit that I'm probably often, if not always, on the defensive. Something that came to mind in terms of something that we could talk about was there's a fellow by the name of Charles Tilley. He's a sociologist. I think he's passed away now. He's written a book titled Credit and Blame, where he studies how in America people typically assign credit and how they typically assign blame. And he writes about how he's discovered people typically assign credit according to race, that people who are white get a lot more credit and trust than people who are black, and people who are black get a lot more blame than people who are white. And so in that credit and blaming assigning isn't in accordance with behavior. It's in accordance with prejudices that the population has. So that can also move into how people express disapproval and approval of one another. One can be given credit, one can be given money, one can be given various things as signs of approval for that person and their behavior. And or one can be given punishment. Things can be taken away from a person as one is given disapproval. So in my experience, as I look around my lived experience compared to white people, I would notice that I'm typically given more blame and more disapproval than others. In terms of answering your question, how do I see myself in a society? How am I treated compared to how I see other people being treated? And it can take a while for a child who's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old to start figuring out, are things working fairly, and how to critically examine what's happening. But as an adult, as I learn to journal and pay attention to the details of my experience, and then to read other sociological studies or things that are written by sociologists and psychologists, then I start to learn that people who study this phenomena will say that, yeah, black people are assigned more disapproval and more blame, and white people are assigned more credit and more approval.
And so dealing with credit or blame and being melanin dominant and a male in this white supremacist society, what do you think, I mean, we're elders in the community now. What is our role? What is our responsibility I mean, our ancestors built Akhenaten or Imhotep or the Great Pyramids how long ago, and what message is being connoted just by those edifices? To me, someone who can tap into my deep inner self with a liquid pineal gland. I have a capacity, I have a role, I have a responsibility. I'm Father Nature. 7 to 10 generations down the line from us, Ken. What are we going to do about credit or blame?
Well, I'm going to try to establish for myself some things whereby I notice that I'm deserving of credit. I'll watch my behavior and compare my own observed behavior to my observed behavior of others, and try to find some things in my behavior that are worthy of credit and worthy of approval, and then try to find out whether other human beings who coexist with me also make similar observations about my behavior and others, whereby I can try in a reputable way earn credit and earn approval.
But if I'm Father Nature, why the fuck do I have to earn goddamn shit? I created this value system or this structure. I am the father of these inbred. I'm the one who inbred to have the melanin recessive child. I mean, if it's not, doesn't look like me, it's a mutation. And so, with it being a mutant albino, bleached white with blue eyes, blonde hair, and they have a more calcified or aggressive thinking strategy in this chess game of life. And they're kicking our ass. I have a man. Why do I have to achieve credit? Why do I have to issue blame? I'm talking about I'm father. I need to see both sides. I need to see the full circumference in all 360 degrees. I have the tenacity within me. With the liquid in my pineal gland, I can become balanced and united with the one verse, the universe.
I see myself as being one of 7+ billion human beings on the planet. I had an experience in the 7th grade. Initially I started out on the wrestling team, and then on the track team. And so as a participant in those sports, one will go to the mat, one will go to the wrestling room, lay out the mat, and one will have various opponents on the wrestling team where one will wrestle to see who's going to be able to start for the team. And so one will find out that one's opponents have will and have strength. And that's not in my imagination, that other human individuals have will and have power, and they express it. And they also express it on the track. When one is running a foot race, 100 or 200, a quarter mile or whatever one is running, or whatever event one is participating in, one will see that the other participants also have will. I mean, that's just one example. But there are various ways that the other 7+ human beings express their will and their agency in the world. And so it seems important to try to acknowledge that these individuals exist. They have will and agency to express, and to try to find some fair way of coexisting.
I'm down with that. So as Father Nature, and see, I don't wish to try to fit through the pinhole of a needle to appease. I have the mental capacity to oversee the will, and I have the desire to have more melanin dominant people express their will.
So do I. I do as well. And then I wonder what generates that. What encourages
this right here? You and me right now are generating that for whoever the fuck's watching this shit. You know?
I agree. And I think that it's generated in conversation as well. As people get together and they converse with one another and share ideas, that they take away from that experience some refreshing value in the other participants in the conversation, and that kind of encouragement is what is sought. And then from that, then melanin dominant people accept their role in humanity, and a more leadership role instead of a more passive role.
And that's what I'm pushing for. If we've gotten as far as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and he was assassinated, and it's 2018. What was it? In my lifetime, it's like I have a role and responsibility to see how far we've come, interpret the ancestors' messages through their articulation in stone. I'm like, how do you express denotative, connotative, and abstract? I mean, the 8 is a very beautiful, it's 2 spheres on one another. And it's almost the symbol of the DNA. If you look at the DNA, there's certain perspective. And how do you communicate this type of information if those out there don't speak English? Maybe they could see the chi, see the energy between you and I as black men expressing ourselves the best way we know how. Because I'm just another brother too. Shit, I ain't nobody.
And I suspect that needs to be seen more, given that the, as you said, the white people, melanin recessive people, have depicted black people as being incapable of having these kinds of discourses with one another. Going in a little bit slightly different direction, I'll share something that perplexes me.
Please, please.
Manuel Castells is a sociologist, and he's written a book titled Communication Power. In the book Communication Power, in the first chapter, he poses a question: what is social power? And then he uses the whole first chapter to explain and define what is social power. However, paraphrasing, it's a form of dominance that one agent or group of agents exercise over another with force. So that's how he defines it. I tend to think that's a pretty accurate definition of social power. Another thing that perplexes me, when I talk with black people who are born and raised in Nigeria, Angola, Kenya, Uganda, and various places like that, I can pose the question, if we become familiar enough with one another to allow for this question to be asked: what is their understanding of how it was that black people were taken out of Africa to the tune of tens of millions of them brought to USA, Jamaica, Brazil, Cuba, Haiti, and various places? How did that happen? Some of the answers that I've gotten has been that 400 or 500 years ago, Europeans came to Africa with fire sticks, firearms, and that Africans weren't familiar with that device, and that the Europeans overwhelmed the chiefs in Africa with that device. That can be one answer that I'll prominently get. Another one will be that there was corruption among Africans, whereby warring chiefs would sell off the defeated tribes. There'd be wars, those who were defeated would be sold off. So I get that. And then I'll ask another question: why weren't the African chiefs enriched in the way that Europeans were enriched by the slave trade? Why is Africa so impoverished as compared to the USA, Belgium, England, France, and European countries who exploited these Africans? Why didn't the Africans who stayed in Africa also show that kind of dominance? And I won't get much of an answer to that. But when it comes to firearms, I'm aware that today there are a number of Nigerians especially who go to places like Cambridge, Oxford, Stanford, MIT, and they get degrees in mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, and they understand how to design and manufacture firearms. But still today, my last check was a couple years ago, a Google search, for countries that manufacture their own firearms. And there are very few countries in Africa that manufacture their own firearms. Ethiopia is one, South Africa is another, but I understand that South Africa initially started manufacturing its firearms when they were under a white apartheid government. And so I asked Africans why in 2015, 16, and 17, given the political ways that governments and states exercise their power, why don't African nations design and manufacture their own firearms? And I'll just get blank stares. So, as we're talking about power, and I'm perplexed by that.
So, you have to forgive me, I'm going to give you a 1, 2, 3 answer.
That's fine.
For me, in my understanding of who I am as a divine black man with a liquid pineal gland, you made reference to social power. When I'm thinking about and understanding who I am with this liquid pineal gland, and I see my inbred mutant albino with the calcified pineal gland after enduring being in Antarctica or cold places, and with the calcification of the pineal gland just needing to kill to survive. And now that they're out of Antarctica, they have a very dominant social power with this calcified pineal gland. And as a father nature, I see, oh my goodness, this is my child. Look at this. I have to set the record straight. I have a role and responsibility to the one verse, the universe. In dealing with, this is a denotative issue. I'm working in the connotative and abstract arenas. We're talking about this is a chess game in life. You have the king, the queen, the bishops, the slanted pieces on the chess game of life. You have the military, the knight moves like a hammer. Then you have the wall, the rook. Yes, because of our liquid pineal gland and just settling, we let our child run astray. And look at what it's gotten us today. Nothing but stratification. Black folks worrying about coily, kinky hair versus Chris Rock, $10 billion industry, black hair. I'm talking about, damn, social power. We are fucked because of the calcification in us, you and I, Ken. We as black men not taking on the role and responsibility of the melanin dominant king and understanding the queen, the black woman, the queen. More powerful than the king. She is the foundation from whence all of us came. Black woman is not upheld nor revered. We don't see her as our yin and yang, as our balance. The social power, the social infrastructure is within a calcified thinking process. Practicing Tai Chi with Master Heege Robinson. Oh, let me give the audience 34 minutes into the show. I'm fucked up. I took that hit. And this is where I go in the abstract. Dealing with being all of who I am as a black man. Becoming one with my divinity. Tapping into all I am. Using the full circumference of the muscle inside the head, not the muscle is just a brain. I'm talking about into our mind and our imagination, into our individuality. Being able to say, oh wow, okay, we're in this chess game of life dealing with social power, calcified pineal gland. I have to have a little more patience and understanding. I'm reading 365 Tao, Dang Ming Tao. And I'm just dealing with a lot of things, Brother Ken. It's like, okay, I have a role in 2018 to continue. Will I get assassinated because I'm sharing such things? Because I don't expect my melanin recessive inbred mutant albino child to acknowledge me as a divine energy? I have to acknowledge that within myself. Then I can put things in proper perspective, have the right value. Why are we valuing dead fucking slaveholders? Benjamins, baby, ain't nothing going on but the rent. You gotta have a J-O-B to be with me. What kind of value structure? Look at the classism. Why can't we more individually take it to a higher level of our understanding of our divinity? I don't need Jesus Christ. I need to see my motherfucking self. Fuck the calcification value structure of valuing an energy outside of yourself, but you going deeper within. You are a melanin. Melanin is biological living light. You are a child of the sun. You vibrate on a cerebral, majestic level. But I can't expect the calcified pineal gland child to teach me this shit.
I have a little bit different experience.
Please.
In this particular way.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in Trenton, New Jersey, being sent to kindergarten, first and second grade, third grade, I remember particular individuals, and typically they were black individuals, in particular black boys, who typically had a very pleasant countenance. Whenever I would look in their direction, they would have an open, warm, inviting way of engaging me with a hello, how are you, with a I'm well, I hope that you're well, or something of that nature. And I remember noticing which individuals had that kind of character. And I thought that's a kind of neat kind of character to develop and to have. Subsequently, I hitchhiked to Alaska in my early 20s and hitchhiked across Canada, across the U.S. a couple times, and then landed in Eugene, Oregon. And I found a population of white people there who behaved like those black characters did in this particular way. A large percentage of the population were apt to make their attention available to each other, to look at one another, to say hello, how are you, to volunteer things about themselves, to pause and wait to see if the person that they were talking to wanted to contribute anything from themselves. And it was a pretty gracious, if not a very gracious way to watch social interactions happen. I remember telling some people in Boston about my experiences in Eugene, Oregon, around 2014 or so, and being told that the world has changed since 9/11, Eugene won't be that way anymore. So in 2016, I went and spent close to a month in Eugene, Oregon, with that advice that Eugene won't be the way I remember it having been in terms of a population of open people who are polite to one another. Within a day of me arriving in Eugene, getting settled in, getting in an apartment, and riding my bicycle around Eugene, I started noticing that more than I remember it, people in Eugene look at each other, open-eyed, aware, attentive, and say, hi, how are you? Volunteer things about themselves, wait for other people to give things back, and that they don't do it. They didn't just do it with me. They did it. Almost everyone in the population does it. Very few people walk around with cell phones. They walk around with their attention available to other people who are present in the social experience. I haven't been to Africa. I've heard that those kinds of conditions prevail there in that way. That African people greet each other on the path as they're moving back and forth from one place to another. As they come into each other's presence, they look at each other, they greet each other, they acknowledge each other, and they're very gracious in that. So here we are in Cambridge. I can notice that it's habituated here where people invariably do not make eye contact with each other. They do not speak to one another, and especially the black men. They walk past each other, they keep their eyes low, or they look up quickly and then lower their eyes. They don't sustain eye contact in a pleasant, gracious way. It's usually defensive or hostile, and I start wondering why that's the case.
Well, I mean, 20 minutes left and very great issues to discuss. Number one, Ken talked about New Jersey, and I would say lower than Massachusetts. I mean, Rhode Island, this quote-unquote New England area with this calcified pineal gland ambiance, if you will. And I grew up in Cambridge, down the coast, and Putnam Ave, right outside of Peabody Terrace, Harvard married couple dorms. Big, tall, high-rise still there on the Charles River. I'm just looking at I chose to go to Atlanta, Morehouse College. I chose to, hey, wait a minute, what is life like? I wanted to adventure, I wanted experience. I went down to Atlanta, I was like, what? There's this many black people in the world? Get the fuck out of here! I was like, wait, all black male college, across the street from Spelman and all quote-unquote high yellow? I'm sorry. Yes, the racism in the black community. The high yellow fine honeys. Morehouse, Spelman, all this blackness and shit, like you talked about down south, more eye contact where, yes, you're acknowledging another human being. Life is wonderful. Life is beautiful. We're melanin dominant. We have self-esteem, self-confidence, just because of the numbers of people. And the value still, dead slaveholders. I had to quit Morehouse because I started living off campus on the other side of town. I'm the little Reverend Richie, trying to be a minister over Union Baptist Church. And on the other side of town, I was living from Thurman Hall, Morehouse College. Had to get over the other side, deal with the real inner city of Atlanta. Walked past the female Reverend Richie. She said, "I'll suck your dick for $10." I said, no. 10 steps later, I'm like, damn, that's a good deal. But I got on home. I was just trying to be grandmother's. Reach her aspirations. I'm down in Morehouse following the path of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Then experience, boom, black. Then I lived in D.C. for a while. Just feeling good about being black. Now I'm still stuck here, and I'm still got kicked off of 480. MIT was first. Kicked me off for sharing this kind of consciousness amongst black people. I don't want to get into the details. I'm running my mouth too much.
You brought up a word that caught my attention, aspirations. So I was raised with a father who tended to want to guide his children to do what they had the passion for.
Mm-hmm.
For us to discover our passion and to follow that without his guidance. That we, according to him, are better off to find out what our passions are and then pursue those things without him deciding for us what our passions are. So when it comes to figuring out my own aspirations, I spent a little bit of time in college at Edison Community College in Fort Myers, Florida. I studied some science and some education. And I dropped out my second year, and then I joined the U.S. Navy for nuclear engineering. So then I had this aspiration that I could be a nuclear engineer. And I didn't complete my training in nuclear engineering school. It was a 6-year program. I did 9 months. The Navy gave me a general honor, honorable conditions discharge. But I became aware that there was an avocation called nuclear engineering, a body of engineering and physics and such, and that could be an aspiration for me. And I'm curious about yourself in terms of discovering as an adult, what were aspirations that you thought were worthy of pursuing?
And see, I'm an Aquarius, and I don't know what I like. It's like, I didn't, you should do this. Little Richie, you should do that. Little Richie, and I guess I had the most respect and closeness to my Nana, because she born February 2nd. We are both Aquarius, the water bearer. And yes, I do believe in the stars and the alignment and tapping in. Once you get deep enough within yourself, and as I'm reading the Tao, it talked about the umbilicus, the umbilical cord, and if you go deep enough within yourself, you can tap into your ancestral history through all the mothers. How do you convey that message 7 to 10 generations down the line? I mean, it took me this long to figure out, well, wait a minute. I like the color purple because it's my birthstone. What's an aspiration? I mean, a goal, okay, Nana wanted me. She was a frustrated black woman. She couldn't become a minister. So I'm the firstborn male. And she wanted to be a minister and couldn't get her voice out. So I desired to become a minister. Go ahead and preach the word. Serve the word of God. I'm trying to remember a Bible scripture, walk by faith, not by sight. For faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. Is that where I am now? Walking by faith, just because I'm tapping into myself and not reaching out to an outside goal it took me 55, how old am I? 56 years old to get to this point of self-respect, self-esteem, self-confidence. Don't give a fuck what another motherfucker say. And see, I'm sorry, Ken, a lot of your conversation for me is still on the very denotative, somebody else looking outside of yourself. What would be the best? I'm like, fuck, the best is not outside of me. The best is within me because I tap into myself with my liquid pineal gland. It's taken me it's like, okay, the ancestral spirits have guided me. I was born at a particular day and time in the month of February 7th, 1962. Tap into the astrology of the innards. Understanding myself. Please interject.
As I become aware of common social needs and then how members of a group fulfill common social needs, some individuals will more assertively step forward with knowledge, ability to do things, to produce what it is that the social need demands.
Mm-hmm.
And in that is an expression of passion. Some people have individually on their own gained some sense of how things get done. That could be nuclear engineering, architecture, planning and farming, any number of things that humans do. Some human beings gain a passion and gain an ability to be better than others in the group for doing particular things. As distribution of abilities happen in the society. And I think that it's good for parents to try to set some guidance for their children, but also let those children find their own passions. That's in terms of answering your question. How do we pass on 7 generations down the line what our people are going to become? Some of that is on those people to express their own passions, to grow into what it is that they're passionate about, what they're good at doing, and then to show that through their efforts and their activities.
Beautiful. And we're showing a bond or a connection here, Ken. There's development, because we're getting back to the core. What do we value? And you talk about engineering. And that's engineering denotative, connotative, and abstract levels. So you're engineering and you want to deal with the very engine. What is the impetus? What is the motivation on that particular level? So I, as a quote-unquote theist, someone, I won't even say that term, no, I'll just say Taoist, someone who's reading the Tao and understanding the parables between the farmer and their activities producing for the community and the interrelationships between those communities and you would say engineering, the integration on that level, but it's the intersocialization. We're talking on the connotative level and just below the abstract of how do you and I as black men relate as we once did, or as our ancestors once did, which is still down south. But those of us, I'm victim number one, matriculate outside of Harvard married couple dorms, and Harvard is this well self-esteemed institution of blah, blah, blah. Oh yes, everyone wants to attend Harvard. Oh yes, I parked my car in Harvard Yard. When you can't park your car in Harvard Yard because there's no parking spaces for walking. I'm just like, okay, I'm playing in this chess game. There's the king, the queen, the bishops have slanted our value system way the fuck up.
The founding fathers made the claim that people of our color, of our persuasion, were 3/5 of a human being from the beginning.
And then all the genetic engineering, and what the fuck do you think is going on now here in the city of Cambridge or in this New England, Bostonian area with Amgen, Biogen, Genzyme, and who the fuck got me kicked off of WMBR 88.1 FM with more black resistance? I was dope following PJ Porter, and then had my own talk show. And then I interviewed the authors of Transformation of America, the true life story of a CIA mind-controlled slave. Stephen Pinker, How the Mind Works author. Call up the president of MIT. I get the letter from MIT. Brother R.A., we ask you to no longer volunteer for WMBR 88.1 MIT College Radio. I was volunteering doing stupid shit. Like I'm doing today, high on air, engaging with another black man, and we're dealing with, okay, in this chess game. I keep saying king and queen, that's an integration of balance between male and female. We don't have enough either within ourselves to balance one another. You asked in last week's show, what does a black man have to offer? I'm like, yo, we have to tap into the divinity of who we are and exercise our abilities, using our chi, using our energy. Yes, the Tao reads all about chi. That inner energy, engineering. You're engineering outside the king and queen. I mean, the bishops, the knights. You said you was in the Navy, the knights.
I need to apologize for being a little bit facetious. I understand that I have something to offer black women and offer humanity, and that other black men have plenty to offer themselves and humanity. Mm-hmm. I understand that. I also understand that that's not the American face. That USA, the state, the nation, doesn't suggest that black men have very much of worth to offer. And so I'm operating in a society of that nature, of that character. And to find that worth in myself and other black men and black women seems to me to be something that happens outside of the state.
And you're right. We have about